Minho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he carefully bandaged the wounded creature's leg. The small animal looked like a cross between a rabbit and a lizard, and it had been caught in one of the old settler traps near the forest edge. Its big eyes watched him with a mix of fear and curiosity. "There you go," he said softly, even though the creature couldn't understand his words. "You'll be fine now." He had been working on New Haven for 3 years as a xenobiologist. His job was to study the local animals and plants to make sure the human colony could live safely alongside them. It wasn't glamorous work, but Minho loved it. Every day brought something new to discover. The sky above him suddenly darkened. Minho looked up and his breath caught in his throat. A massive ship hung in the air, blocking out the sun. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The hull was covered in scales that seemed to shift colors from green to bronze. Strange symbols glowed along its sides. His communicator buzzed. It was Yuna, his colleague and closest friend on New Haven. "Minho, get back to the settlement now. Unknown alien ship just arrived." "I can see it," he replied, staring at the enormous vessel. "What do they want?" "We don't know yet. Administrator Hyun is trying to establish contact. Just get back here." Minho released the small creature and watched it hop away into the bushes. Then he grabbed his equipment bag and started running toward the settlement. His heart pounded in his chest. First contact situations were always dangerous. Humans had met several alien species in the past century, but each encounter was different. Some had been peaceful, others had not. By the time he reached the settlement's main square, a crowd had gathered. Everyone was staring at the beings who stood in the center. Minho pushed through the crowd and stopped dead in his tracks. There were 5 of them. They stood at least 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that reminded him of reptiles from Earth. But they walked upright like humans, and their eyes held an intelligence that was unmistakable. They wore elaborate armor decorated with crystals and metalwork. The one in the center, clearly their leader, was the largest. She had pale silver scales and wore a crown-like headpiece. Administrator Hyun stood before them, looking small and nervous. A translation device hovered between them, converting their words into something both species could understand. "We are the Velkari," the large female said. Her voice was deep and resonated with authority. "I am Thesara, matriarch of the Cathara clan. We come during our sacred bonding season. We welcome you," Hyun said carefully. "How can we help you?" "We have traveled far to select worthy individuals to join our clan," Thesara explained. "This is our tradition, practiced for thousands of years. We observe, we choose, and we invite them to become part of our family." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Minho felt Yuna grab his arm. She had pushed through to stand beside him. "What does that mean exactly?" Hyun asked. "Those selected will leave with us. They will undergo the trials. If they succeed, they become clan members. If they fail—" Thesara paused. "They are returned home." Minho didn't like how she said that last part. It sounded ominous. Thesara's eyes swept across the crowd. Minho felt her gaze pass over him once, then return. She stared at him with an intensity that made him want to step back, but he forced himself to stand still. "You," she said, pointing directly at him, "the one who tends to the wounded creatures. Step forward." Every eye in the settlement turned to look at Minho. He felt his mouth go dry. "Me?" he managed to say. "I have watched you this day. I have seen your compassion for life, your gentle hands, your patient spirit. These are qualities the Velkari value. I choose you for my clan." Yuna's grip on his arm tightened. "No," she whispered. "Don't do it." Thesara held out her hand. In her palm rested a crystal about the size of a chicken egg. It was clear like diamond, but seemed to contain swirling colors inside. As Minho stared at it, the colors began to glow brighter. "The bonding crystal responds to you," Thesara said with what might have been satisfaction. "It confirms my choice." "Wait." Hyun stepped forward. "Can we discuss this? Our people need time to understand what this means." You have until 3 of your sunrises, Thesara replied. The one called Minho may choose to accept or refuse. But know this. Humans of New Haven, refusing the bonding season invitation is a grave insult to the Velkari. We have never before extended this honor to your species. How you respond will determine how our peoples relate to each other in the future. With that, she placed the crystal on a small platform that floated toward Minho. The device stopped right in front of him, hovering at chest height. The crystal pulsed with warm light. The Velkari turned and walked back toward their ship. Within minutes, they had departed, leaving the settlement in chaos. Hyun immediately called an emergency meeting. The settlement's leaders gathered in the community hall, and Minho found himself at the center of attention. You can't go, Yuna insisted. We don't know anything about them. What are these trials? What happens if you fail? She's right, said Daeho, the security chief. This could be dangerous, but Hyun looked worried for different reasons. Did you hear what she said? Refusing would insult them. The Velkari are a powerful species. Our intelligence reports say they control dozens of star systems. If we anger them, they could destroy this colony. Or worse, they could go to war with Earth. So we're supposed to sacrifice Minho to keep them happy? Yuna's voice rose in anger. Nobody's sacrificing anyone, Hyun said, but he didn't sound convinced. He turned to Minho. This has to be your choice, but you need to understand what's at stake. Minho spent the next 2 days barely sleeping. He researched everything the colony's database had on the Velkari. There wasn't much. They were an old species. Proud and traditional, they valued strength and honor. Beyond that, details were scarce. The bonding crystal sat on his desk, glowing softly. Sometimes he thought he could feel warmth radiating from it. Yuna visited him on the second night. You're going to go, aren't you? I think I have to, Minho said quietly. Not just for the colony. I keep thinking about what Thesara said. They've never chosen a human before. Maybe this is a chance to build a real relationship between our species. Maybe it's an opportunity we can't waste. Or maybe it's a death sentence. Maybe, he admitted. But when I became a xenobiologist, I accepted that I might face dangerous situations. Understanding other species, learning to live with them, that's important work. This is just another step in that direction. 5. Yuna hugged him tightly. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, he said with a weak smile. On the third morning, Minho stood in the settlement square with a single bag of belongings. The Velkari ship had returned, and Thesara waited for him. You have chosen to accept, she said. It wasn't a question. I have, Minho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Thesara held out her hand, and he took it. Her skin was cool and dry, covered in fine scales. Her grip was firm but not crushing. Then come, Minho of Earth. Your new life begins now. As he walked toward the alien ship, Minho looked back one last time. Yuna stood at the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Hyun looked relieved but guilty. The other settlers watched with a mixture of awe and fear. Then he stepped through the ship's entrance, and the door sealed behind him. The vessel lifted into the sky, faster and faster, until New Haven was just a small dot below. Then even that disappeared as the ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying him toward an unknown future among the stars. The inside of the Velkari ship was nothing like the human vessels Minho had traveled on before. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls had a strange organic quality, as if they were grown rather than constructed. Soft light emanated from strips along the ceiling, and the air smelled of something he couldn't quite identify, like heated stone and spices. Thesara led him through the winding passages without speaking. Other Velkari stopped to stare at him as they passed. Some looked curious, others seemed hostile. Minho kept his eyes forward and tried to appear calm, even though his heart raced. They entered a large chamber, where 2 other Velkari waited. One was a male, with dark green scales, and numerous scars across his arms and chest. The other was younger and smaller, with bright copper-colored scales that caught the light. "This is Corvin, my son." Thesara gestured to the scarred male. "And this is Nira, a warrior of our clan." Corvin looked at Minho with barely concealed disgust. "This is what you chose, mother? A weak creature, barely half our size?" "Mind your tongue," Thesara said sharply. "I have made my selection." The crystal accepted him. "The crystal responds to many things," Corvin muttered. "That doesn't make him worthy." Nira stepped closer, examining Minho with open curiosity. "I have never seen a human up close before. Your skin is so smooth. Do you have any scales at all?" "No scales," Minho replied. "Just skin." "Strange," Nira said, but she didn't sound mean about it. "How do you regulate your body temperature?" Before Minho could answer, the ship lurched. He stumbled and nearly fell, but Nira's hand shot out to steady him. Her grip was incredibly strong. "You will need to adapt quickly," Thesara said. "Our gravity is different from your world. Our customs are different. Our expectations are different. You have been chosen for the bonding season, which means you must complete the trial of kinship. 3 challenges await you. Pass them all, and you become part of our clan. Fail, and..." She left the sentence unfinished. Over the next few days, Minho learned what that meant. The ship was traveling to Velkar Prime, the Velkari homeworld, and the journey would take 2 weeks. During that time, he was expected to begin adapting to their way of life. The gravity was the first challenge. The Velkari preferred environments with stronger gravity than Earth standard, about 1.6 times what Minho was used to. Every step felt like he was carrying a heavy pack. His muscles ached constantly. Simple tasks like walking down a corridor left him exhausted and sweating. Nira took pity on him and helped him design an exercise program. "You must build strength," she explained. "The first trial will test your ability in combat. Velkari value warriors above all else." "I'm not a warrior," Minho said, breathing hard after a simple workout. "I'm a scientist." "Then you will likely fail," Corvin said from across the training room. He was practicing with weapons that looked like a cross between a spear and a blade. "Mother has made a foolish choice." But Minho refused to give up. He couldn't match the Velkari in raw strength, so he focused on what he could do. He studied their fighting techniques, looking for patterns and weaknesses. He watched how they moved, how they attacked and defended. His scientific mind analyzed everything. The first trial came on the 10th day of the journey. The clan gathered in a large arena within the ship. Minho stood in the center, feeling very small and very alone. Thesara addressed the crowd. "The first trial tests combat prowess. Minho will face 3 opponents. He must defeat them or survive for 10 minutes. 3 young Velkari warriors entered the arena. They were all larger than Minho, with muscles that bulged beneath their scales. They carried blunted weapons that could still break bones. Minho had no weapon. That was intentional. Thesara had explained. He must prove his resourcefulness. The trial began. The 3 warriors charged at him immediately. Minho ran. Not in fear, but with purpose. The arena had been designed with various obstacles and structures. He had studied the layout carefully. He reached a pillar and ducked behind it as a weapon smashed into the stone where his head had been. He grabbed a handful of the sand that covered the arena floor and threw it in the next warrior's eyes. While that one stumbled back, cursing, Minho rolled under a low barrier. He couldn't win through strength, but he could win through strategy. He led them on a chase through the arena, using every obstacle to his advantage. He tricked one warrior into hitting another with a wild swing. He used the pillars to prevent them from surrounding him. He conserved his energy while forcing them to waste theirs in frustrated attacks. When the 10 minutes ended, Minho was still standing. Barely. He was covered in bruises and gasping for air. But he had survived. The crowd of Velkari made sounds that he learned was their version of approval. Even Corvin looked slightly less contemptuous. "The first trial is passed," Thesara announced. "Not through strength, but through cunning. This is acceptable." The second trial came 3 days later. Minho was brought to the ship's resource center, where food and supplies were managed. The challenge was to increase the clan's provisions somehow, to prove he could contribute to their survival. The Valkyrie diet consisted mainly of proteins and minerals. They had stores of meat from various creatures, but Minho noticed they wasted a lot. They only ate certain parts and threw the rest away. Drawing on his knowledge of biology, Minho proposed a system to break down the waste using bacterial cultures. The bacteria would convert the unused parts into a protein paste that could be stored longer and took up less space. It wasn't appetizing by human standards, but the Valkyrie didn't care about taste as much as efficiency. He worked for days in the resource center, setting up his system. Nira helped him, asking endless questions about human science and technology. She was fascinated by how differently humans approached problems. When he presented his results to Thesara, the numbers spoke for themselves. His system would increase their usable food stores by 40%. The second trial is passed, Thesara declared. You have proven you can provide for the clan. Corvin still looked skeptical, but he had stopped making openly hostile comments. The third trial came unexpectedly. Minho was in his quarters when the ship suddenly shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. He ran into the corridor and saw Valkyrie rushing in all directions. What's happening? He shouted to a passing warrior. Engineering failure. Section 7. Minho didn't think. He just ran toward Section 7. He didn't know the ship well, but he followed the crowd of Valkyrie heading in that direction. When he arrived, he saw chaos. A plasma conduit had ruptured, spewing superheated gases into the corridor. Several Valkyrie were trying to seal it, but they couldn't get close enough without being burned, and trapped on the other side, behind the wall of deadly plasma, was Nira. She was unconscious on the floor. The heat had overcome her. We cannot reach her, one of the engineers shouted. The plasma will kill anyone who tries. Minho looked around frantically. There had to be a way. His eyes fell on the environmental suits hanging on the wall. They were designed for Valkyrie, far too large for him. But the material could withstand extreme temperatures. He grabbed one and pulled it on, even though it hung loosely on his smaller frame. He wrapped extra layers of heat-resistant material around his arms and legs. What are you doing, human? Someone shouted. Saving her. Before anyone could stop him, Minho ran toward the plasma stream. The heat was incredible, even through the suit. He could feel his skin burning, but he pushed forward. He reached Nira and grabbed her arms, dragging her back toward safety. The Valkyrie pulled both of them clear of the danger zone. Engineers rushed forward to seal the conduit. Medical personnel surrounded Nira, checking her condition. Minho collapsed. The pain hit him all at once. His arms and hands were badly burned. The makeshift protection hadn't been enough. He heard voices around him, but they seemed distant and fading. Someone lifted him gently. Through his blurred vision, he saw it was Corvin. Foolish human, Corvin said, but his voice was soft. Brave, but foolish. Minho woke in the medical bay. His arms were wrapped in regenerative bandages that felt cool against his burned skin. Nira sat beside his bed, looking worried. You saved my life, she said quietly. Why? You barely know me. 24. In Forning with Hend. And also in Division. Comset him furtively 4. Comset in the first of all. Comset in the 24. Comset in the 24. Comset in the 24. Comset in the wither. Comset. You're part of the clan, Minho replied, his voice hoarse. That's what matters, right? Nira's eyes widened, and she made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. You truly believe that already? Later, Thesara came to see him. Behind her stood Corvin and other clan members. The third trial tests devotion to clan, Thesara said. You were willing to die for one of us. Some argue that your methods in the trials were not traditional, that you passed through cleverness rather than strength. Minho's heart sank. Had he failed after all? But I say, Thesara continued, her voice rising. That the clan needs more than just strength. We need those who think differently, who solve problems in new ways, who understand that protecting family is the highest honor. You have passed all 3 trials, Minho of Earth. The clan members behind her began to make the approval sound, louder this time. Corvin stepped forward and placed a hand on Minho's shoulder. I was wrong about you, human. You have earned your place among us. As Minho lay in the medical bay, feeling the pain in his arms but also a strange warmth in his chest, he realized something had changed. He was no longer just a visitor on this ship. He was becoming part of something larger than himself. The ship continued its journey to Velkar Prime, but now Minho traveled not as a stranger, but as a member of the Cathara clan. Velkar Prime appeared in the viewport like a massive red jewel. The planet was mostly desert, with vast stretches of rust-colored sand broken up by mountain ranges and deep canyons. 2 small moons orbited close to the surface, casting strange shadows across the landscape. Minho pressed his face against the viewport, watching as the ship descended through the atmosphere. His burns had mostly healed, thanks to the Velkari medical technology, leaving only faint scars on his arms. Nira stood beside him, pointing out landmarks. That is the Great Scar, she said, indicating a canyon that stretched across an entire continent. And there, those towers, that is the capital city where the High Council meets. But we are going to the clan territories, to the east. The ship landed in a sprawling complex of buildings built from the same red stone as the desert around them. As Minho stepped off the ship and onto Velkar Prime for the first time, the heat hit him like a physical force. The twin suns beat down mercilessly, and the air was so dry it hurt to breathe. This is home, Thesara said, spreading her arms wide. Welcome to the Cathara clan grounds. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Minho was given quarters in the clan house, a room carved from solid rock that stayed surprisingly cool despite the heat outside. He met dozens of clan members, trying desperately to remember names and ranks. Some welcomed him warmly. Others watched him with suspicion. But the hardest part came when Thesara made a public announcement during the evening meal. She stood before the gathered clan, with Minho at her side, and declared that he had passed all 3 trials, that he was now officially a member of the Cathara clan. That was when Corvin stood up. Mother, I must speak against this decision. The hall went silent. Everyone turned to stare. Thesara's expression darkened. You challenge my judgment? I challenge the interpretation of the trials, Corvin said carefully. Yes, the human survived the combat trial, but he did not defeat his opponents through honorable combat. He ran and hid, and threw sand like a child. Yes, he improved our food stores, but he used alien methods, not the traditional ways of the Velkari. And yes, he saved Nira, but he was reckless and nearly died in the process. These are not the qualities of a true clan member. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement with Corvin. Others looked uncertain. Minho felt his stomach drop. After everything, was it all going to fall apart now? Thesara stood still for a long moment. Then she said, You have the right to challenge, my son. Let the clan decide. All who believe Corvin speaks truth, stand on his side. All who support my decision, stand with me. The clan split. It wasn't an even split, but it was close enough to be concerning. Roughly 40% stood with Corvin. The rest remained with Thesara, though some looked conflicted. That night, Minho couldn't sleep. He sat outside his quarters, looking up at the unfamiliar stars, wondering if he had made a terrible mistake coming here. You look troubled. Minho turned to see a human man walking toward him. He was older, maybe in his 40s, with sun-darkened skin, and the build of someone who had adapted to heavy gravity. He wore Velkari-style clothing and carried himself with confidence. I'm Taeyang, the man said, sitting down beside Minho, without being invited. I was selected by the Ruthak clan 8 years ago during the last bonding season. There are other humans here? Minho asked in surprise. A few. Not many. Most clans don't choose outsiders. And of those who do. Taeyang paused. Not all of them make it through the first year. What happens to them? Some fail the trials and are sent home. Some die during the trials. Some pass the trials but can't adapt to life here. The culture is different, the environment is harsh, and the Velkari expect total commitment. It breaks people. That's encouraging, Minho said dryly. Taeyang laughed. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. The next few months will be the hardest of your life. You're going to question everything. Doubt yourself. Wonder why you came here. But if you can push through that, if you can really commit to being part of the clan, then you'll find something most people never get. What's that? A family that chose you. Not one you were born into, but one that looked at you and decided you were worth having. They talked for hours that night. Taeyang explained things about Velkari culture that Minho had been struggling to understand. How they communicated as much through scent and body temperature as through words. How their concept of honor was different from human ideas. How the bonding season served an important purpose in their society. The Velkari are aggressive by nature, Taeyang explained. Their biology makes them territorial and competitive. Without outside influences, clans would constantly fight each other. But during bonding season, they bring in outsiders who see things differently. It forces them to think beyond their instincts. It's brilliant, really. So we're here to keep them from killing each other? We're here to remind them that there are other ways to live. Other perspectives, other solutions to problems. You already proved that in your trials. You fought without fighting. You created abundance from waste. You risked yourself for someone else without thinking about honor or glory. Minho thought about this. Corvin doesn't see it that way. Corvin is afraid, Taeyang said. He sees the old ways changing, and it terrifies him. But he'll come around, or he won't. Either way, you can't live your life trying to please everyone. The political tension in the clan grew worse over the following weeks. Communication with New Haven was disrupted by a massive solar storm, cutting Minho off from any news from home. He threw himself into learning everything he could about being Velkari. Nira taught him their combat forms, moving slowly so he could follow. Thassara showed him the clan histories, thousands of years of records carved into stone tablets. Even some of Corvin's supporters began to soften toward him as they saw how hard he was working to fit in. The bonding season festival approached, a massive celebration that brought all the clans together. Minho was nervous but excited. Taeyang had explained that it was a chance for selected individuals from different clans to meet and exchange experiences. But 3 days before the festival, everything changed. Minho was in the training yard with Nira when he noticed something odd. Thassara was meeting with several clan elders, and they all looked worried. Their body temperatures were elevated, which in Velkari meant strong emotions. Fear, or anger, or both. Something is wrong, Nira said quietly. I can smell it. Later that evening, Thassara called a clan meeting. Her face was grim. I have received information about a threat, she announced. During the festival, someone plans to attempt my assassination. Shocked sounds rippled through the gathered clan. Who? Corvin demanded. Which clan would dare? The information came from a dream, Thassara said. A vision that has proven true before. Minho saw several clan members exchange skeptical glances. They didn't believe in prophecy the way Thassara did, but Minho's scientific mind started working. He thought back to something Taeyang had said, about how some clans opposed the bonding season tradition, about how selecting outsiders was controversial. What if it's not about you personally? Minho said without thinking. Everyone turned to look at him. What if it's about what you represent? You chose a human. You're one of the strongest voices supporting the bonding season tradition. If someone wanted to make a statement against that tradition, you'd be the perfect target. Thassara's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Continue. During the festival, all the clans gather. It would be the perfect time to send a message. Kill a matriarch who supports bringing in outsiders, and you scare the others into stopping the practice. The human makes sense, one of the elders said grudgingly. Corvin stepped forward. If this is true, we must increase security. Station warriors around Mother at all times. No, Thassara said firmly. That would reveal that we know about the threat. Better to let them think we are unaware, but we will be ready. She looked at Minho. You see patterns that we do not. Your mind works differently. That is why I chose you. I will need that different perspective in the days ahead. The festival began 2 days later. Thousands of Velkhari filled the ancient amphitheater in the capital city. The air was filled with the sounds of celebration, music that sounded like deep drums mixed with high whistling notes. Selected individuals from other clans were easy to spot, the aliens standing out among the sea of scaled bodies. Minho met 3 other humans, 2 from different clans and 1 who had married into Velkhari society decades ago. There was also a crystalline being whose species he didn't recognize, and a creature that looked like a walking tree. But even as he tried to enjoy the festival, Minho couldn't shake his nervousness. His eyes constantly scanned the crowd, looking for anything suspicious. It was his xenobiology training that saved Thesara's life. He noticed a group of Velkhari whose scent was wrong. Most Velkhari at the festival gave off sense of excitement and joy, but these 3 smelled of aggression and focus. They moved through the crowd with purpose, getting closer to where Thesara sat in the place of honor. Minho pushed through the crowd toward them. He saw one reach beneath their ceremonial robes, saw the glint of a blade. "Assassin!" he shouted in the Velkhari language he had learned. The amphitheater erupted into chaos. Corvin and other warriors leaped to protect Thesara. The 3 assassins tried to run but were quickly surrounded and captured. Later, when order had been restored, Thesara stood before the assembled clans. The captured assassins knelt before her, their clan markings revealed. They were from the Shadrach clan, a group known for their conservative views. "You have shown us all why the bonding season matters," Thesara said to Minho, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Different eyes see different things. Different minds solve different problems. This is not weakness. This is strength." 8. As the crowd dispersed, Corvin approached Minho. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Corvin placed his hand on Minho's shoulder, in the Velkhari gesture of respect. "I have been a fool," Corvin said quietly. "Forgive me, brother." Minho felt something warm bloom in his chest. "There's nothing to forgive, brother." That night, as Minho lay in his quarters, he realized he hadn't thought about Earth in days. New Haven felt like a distant memory. This was home now. These people were his family, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. The 3 assassins were questioned for days. Minho watched from behind a viewing screen as Velkhari interrogators worked to uncover the truth. What they discovered was far worse than anyone had expected. The assassination attempt was not an isolated incident. It was part of a larger movement. The Shadrach clan had been building support among conservative clans for years, arguing that the bonding season tradition weakened the Velkhari people. They believed that bringing in outsiders diluted their culture and made them vulnerable. "How many clans support them?" Minho asked Thesara, as they reviewed the interrogation reports. "At least 7 that we know of," she replied, her voice heavy with concern. "Perhaps more who hide their true feelings. The Shadrach clan leader, Vornak, is gathering them for a challenge to the High Council. He wants to end the bonding season permanently. Can he do that? If enough clans support him, yes. The High Council must respect the will of the majority. And fear is a powerful motivator. If Vornak can convince enough clans that outsiders are a threat, he will win." Minho's communicator suddenly buzzed. He looked down at it in surprise. The solar storm had finally passed. Messages from New Haven were coming through again. The first was from Yuna, sent weeks ago. She was worried about him, asking if he was okay. The second was from Administrator Hyun, formal and brief, hoping the diplomatic relationship remained positive. But the third message made Minho's heart race. It was from someone named Hana, identifying herself as an Earth ambassador to the Velkhari territories. She wanted to meet with him immediately. Thesara gave him permission to take a transport to the capital city. Nira insisted on coming with him as protection. They arrived at the Earth Embassy, a small building that looked out of place among the massive Velkhari structures. Hana was a small woman, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She greeted Minho in Korean, which he hadn't heard in months. The familiar language brought an unexpected wave of homesickness. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks," Hana said, leading him to a private office. The solar storm disrupted everything. "But I'm here now, with an offer from Earth." "What kind of offer?" "We want you to come home. The situation here is becoming dangerous. We've heard about the assassination attempt, about the political tensions. Earth doesn't want one of its citizens caught in the middle of an alien civil conflict. We have a ship ready to extract you." Minho sat back in his chair, stunned. "Just like that? Leave? You've done your part. You established first contact. You completed their trials. You even saved lives. No one can ask more of you than that. You can come home to New Haven, or even to Earth itself. Your family misses you." "My family," Minho repeated quietly. He thought of his parents back on Earth, who he hadn't spoken to in over a year. He thought of his old life, his research, his comfortable routines. Then he thought of Thesara, who had chosen him. Of Nira, who had become a true friend. Of Corvin, who had called him brother. Of Taeyang, who had shown him what it meant to commit to this new life. "I need time to think," he said finally. Hana nodded. "You have 3 days. After that, the extraction window closes. Choose wisely, Minho." He left the embassy in a daze. Nira could sense his troubled emotions and gave him space during the transport ride back to clan territory. When they arrived, he found Taeyang waiting for him. "Heard you met with the Earth ambassador," Taeyang said. "They offer you a way out? How did you know?" "They tried the same thing with me, years ago. During my first major clan crisis." Taeyang sat on a stone bench and gestured for Minho to join him. "I'm going to tell you something, and you need to listen carefully. Nobody can make this choice for you. Not me, not Thesara, not your human friends. You have to decide what kind of person you want to be." "What did you choose?" "I stayed. And I've never regretted it. But that was my choice. Your path might be different." Minho spent a sleepless night wrestling with his decision. Part of him wanted the safety and familiarity of Earth. But a larger part, a part that surprised him with its strength, wanted to stay. By morning, he had made his choice. But before he could contact Hana, news arrived that changed everything. The Shadrach clan had taken a hostage, a human hostage. Her name was Nari. She had been selected by the Shadrach clan during the same bonding season as Minho. But unlike Minho's experience with the Cathara clan, Nari had been treated terribly. The Shadrach had never intended to truly bond with her. They had kept her as a prisoner, a symbol of what they saw as the corruption of Velkari traditions. Now they were using her as leverage. They announced that they would release her only if the High Council agreed to hear their petition to end the bonding season. Thesara called an emergency clan meeting. "This is an outrage. The bonding season has sacred laws. Once someone is selected, they must be treated as clan. The Shadrach have violated this. They have dishonored themselves. But what can we do?" one elder asked. "If we attack them to free the human, it starts a war between clans. The High Council will not support that." Minho stood up. "Then we don't attack. We rescue her quietly." Everyone turned to look at him. The Shadrach expect a confrontation. Minho continued, his mind racing through possibilities. "They want to force a public crisis. But what if we don't give them one? What if we get Nari out without them even knowing until it's too late?" Corvin leaned forward with interest. "You have a plan?" "The start of one. But I'll need help. And I'll need someone who knows how to move unseen." Taeyang smiled. "I think I know where this is going." Over the next 2 days, they planned carefully. Taeyang used his contacts with other selected individuals to gather intelligence on the Shadrach clan grounds. They learned that Nari was being held in a secured building on the edge of their territory. Guards watched her constantly, but they were complacent. They didn't expect anyone to attempt a rescue. The team would be small. Minho, Taeyang, Nira, and 2 other Cathara warriors who were skilled in stealth operations. They would go in at night, during the sleep cycle, when guards were least alert. Thesara approved the plan. But she was worried. If you are caught, I cannot protect you. The Shadrach will claim you attacked them unprovoked. It could start the very war we are trying to avoid. Then we won't get caught, Minho said with more confidence than he felt. They traveled to Shadrach territory in an unmarked transport, posing as merchants. The Shadrach clan grounds were similar to the Cathara territory, but darker somehow. The buildings were tall and angular, designed to intimidate. Guards patrolled everywhere. They waited until deep night. Minho's heart pounded so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. But he forced himself to stay calm, to think clearly. Nira led the way. Despite her size, she moved like a shadow. The Cathara warriors followed, equally silent. Minho and Taeyang came last, relying on the others to guide them safely past the patrols. They reached the building where Nari was held. One of the Cathara warriors disabled the security system, using a device that Minho had designed based on his study of Velkari technology. Human understanding of electronics, combined with Velkari engineering, made for an effective tool. Inside, they found Nari in a small room with bare stone walls. She was thin and looked exhausted. But when she saw them, her eyes went wide with hope. "Please tell me this is real," she whispered in English. "It's real," Taeyang replied softly. "We're getting you out." They moved quickly but carefully, retracing their path through the compound. They were almost to the perimeter when a guard rounded a corner unexpectedly. Before he could shout an alarm, Nira struck him unconscious with a precise blow, but the damage was done. The guard's patrol partner had seen them. He raised an alarm horn to his lips. Minho didn't think. He grabbed a stone from the ground and threw it with all his strength. His aim was perfect. The stone hit the guard's hand, knocking the horn away. The Cathara warriors rushed forward and subdued both guards before they could make any more noise. "Run," Nira hissed. "Now!" They sprinted for the transport. Behind them, they could hear shouts as more guards discovered the unconscious sentries. The compound was waking up. They piled into the transport and it lifted off just as Shadrach warriors burst out of the buildings. Energy weapons fired at them, but they were already too high. Already accelerating away, Nari sat in the back of the transport, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she kept saying. "Thank you." They brought her to Cathara territory. Thesara welcomed her personally, offering her shelter and protection. Nari told them about her months with the Shadrach clan, about how they had treated her like a servant, how they had used her as proof that humans were weak and unworthy. "They wanted me to fail," she said. "They wanted to prove that the bonding season was a mistake." That night, as Minho sat with Nari and helped her eat her first decent meal in months, he realized something important. He had found his answer about whether to stay or leave. He had found it when he risked everything to save someone he had never met, simply because she was a human who had been wronged. The next morning, he sent a message to Ambassador Hana. It was brief. "Thank you for the offer, but I'm staying. This is where I belong." But the rescue had consequences. The Shadrach clan was furious. They claimed the Cathara clan had attacked them unprovoked, had stolen their property. They called for justice from the High Council, and they demanded that all clans gather for a sacred assembly, where they would present their case for ending the bonding season forever. Thesara came to Minho's quarters that evening. "The assembly will take place in 1 month. Vornak will speak against the bonding season. He will use what happened to build support for his position." "Let me speak too," Minho said. "Let me tell the truth about what happened to Nari. Let me show them what the bonding season is supposed to be." Thesara studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You understand what you are offering? You would stand before thousands of Velkari, many of whom already doubt you. You would argue against a clan leader who has been planning this for years." "I understand," Minho said. "But someone needs to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Someone needs to show them that the bonding season isn't about weakness, it's about becoming something greater together. Then you will speak, Thesara said, and we will prepare you for the greatest challenge you have yet faced. As she left, Corvin entered. I heard what you said to Mother. You're either very brave or completely insane. We for you, probably both, Minho replied with a tired smile. Good, Corvin said. The best warriors usually are. The sacred assembly was held on Velkar Prime's largest moon in an ancient amphitheater carved from solid rock. It was a place that had witnessed thousands of years of Velkari history, where the most important decisions of their civilization were made. Minho stood at the edge of the vast structure and felt incredibly small. Thousands of Velkari filled the seats, representing dozens of clans from across their empire. The air was thick with tension and the mixed sense of so many beings in one place. Thesara placed a hand on his shoulder. Remember what we practiced. Speak from the heart, but also speak to their minds. The Velkari respect both passion and logic. Minho nodded, his throat too dry to speak. Over the past month, he had prepared endlessly. Thesara had taught him the formal speaking traditions. Nira had helped him practice the body language and scent control that was part of Velkari communication. Taeyang had shared every trick he knew about addressing large crowds. But now, standing here, Minho wondered if it would be enough. The ceremony began with traditional rituals. The High Council members entered. 5 ancient Velkari who served as judges and moderators. They took their places on a raised platform that overlooked the entire amphitheater. Then Vornak of the Shadrach clan stepped forward. He was massive, even for a Velkari, with black scales that seemed to absorb light. Scars covered his body, each one a mark of honor from past battles. His voice boomed across the amphitheater without need for amplification. I come before this sacred assembly to speak a hard truth, Vornak began. The bonding season tradition is killing us. Not quickly, like a blade to the heart, but slowly, like poison in our blood. His words were calculated to strike fear. He spoke of how the Velkari had once been the strongest species in the galaxy, how they had conquered world after world. But now, he claimed, they had grown weak. They invited outsiders into their clans, shared their secrets, and diluted their strength. Look at the clans who embrace this tradition most strongly, Vornak said, pointing at the Kethera section where Minho sat. They bring in creatures half our size, with no scales, no strength, no understanding of our ways. They call them family. They give them equal voice in clan matters. And what do we gain? Nothing but dependence on those who do not share our blood. Minho felt anger rising in his chest, but Taeyang, sitting beside him, placed a calming hand on his arm. Vornak continued for nearly an hour, building his case. He brought forward clan members who spoke about conflicts caused by selected individuals who didn't understand Velkari customs. He presented data showing that clans with outsiders faced more internal disputes. He even brought forward Nari. But what he said about her was a lie. This human was selected by my clan, Vornak said, gesturing to where Nari sat. We treated her with honor, as tradition demands. But she was weak, unable to adapt to our ways. She begged to leave. And yet the tradition forbids us from releasing a selected individual until they complete the bonding trials. We were trapped, forced to care for someone who brought nothing but burden. Minho saw Nari's face go pale with rage and hurt. He started to stand, but Thesara motioned for him to wait. The Kethera clan then attacked our territory and stole her, Vornak continued. They violated our sovereignty, risked starting a war between clans, all for a creature who means nothing in the grand scope of our civilization. This is what the bonding season has brought us to. Division, weakness, dishonor. When Vornak finished, the amphitheater erupted with discussion. Some clans cheered his words. Others argued against them. The High Council had to call for silence 3 times. Then it was Thesara's turn to speak. She defended the bonding season with the authority of someone who had lived for over 2 centuries. She spoke of how the tradition had prevented countless clan wars by forcing the Velkari to see beyond their own perspectives. She reminded them that their greatest technological advances had come from insights provided by selected individuals who thought differently. But Minho could see that many in the crowd were unmoved. Fear was a powerful motivator, and Vornak had spread it effectively. Finally, the High Council spoke. "We have heard from clan leader Vornak and matriarch Thesara. Now we will hear from the selected individual himself. Let Minho of the Cathara clan speak." The amphitheater fell silent. Minho stood and walked to the center of the speaking floor. Thousands of eyes watched him. He could smell the mixture of curiosity, skepticism, and outright hostility from different sections of the crowd. He began to speak, using the formal Velkari he had practiced so many times. "I stand before you not as an expert on your culture. I have been here less than a year. I cannot claim to understand all your traditions or your history. But I can tell you what I have learned. And I can tell you the truth." His voice carried across the amphitheater, amplified by the natural acoustics of the stone. "Vornak says that selected individuals bring nothing but burden. But let me tell you what I have seen. In my clan, there is a Velkari named Nira. She was trapped by a plasma conduit failure. I rescued her, and in doing so, I was badly burned. Was this a burden? Perhaps. But Nira later saved my life when I fell during a training exercise in high gravity. She caught me before I cracked my skull on stone. We are stronger together than apart." He saw some clan members lean forward with interest. "Vornak says we dilute your strength. But strength is not just muscles and scales. When I faced the combat trial, I could not defeat my opponents through force. I am, as Vornak says, half your size. But I won through strategy, through seeing patterns and using them. Is this not also strength? Does thinking make you weak?" He modulated his body temperature as Thesara had taught him, showing confidence and calm. Some Velkari in the crowd responded to this unconsciously, their own temperatures shifting. "When I faced the resource trial, I used methods you had never seen before. Human science combined with Velkari needs. The result was 40% more food storage. Every member of my clan benefits from this. Is this weakness? Or is this what happens when different minds work together?" Now he moved to the harder part. He turned to face Vornak directly. "But let me address the biggest lie that has been spoken today. Vornak says that Nari was weak. That she begged to leave. That she was a burden my clan stole. This is false." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Calling a clan leader a liar in a sacred assembly was nearly unthinkable. Nari was not weak. She was imprisoned. The Shadrach clan violated the sacred laws of the bonding season. They did not treat her as family. They treated her as a servant, as a prisoner, as proof of their prejudice. We did not steal her. We rescued her from abuse." Vornak roared in rage. "This is an outrage. You dare accuse my clan." "Let her speak," Minho shouted back. "Let Nari tell this assembly what really happened." The High Council conferred briefly, then nodded. "The selected individual may speak." Nari stood, trembling but determined. In a quiet voice that grew stronger as she continued, she told her story. About how the Shadrach had never given her the trials. About how they had locked her in a room for months. About how they had told her daily that humans were inferior, that she would never be worthy. By the time she finished, even some of Vornak's supporters looked uncomfortable. Minho spoke again. "The bonding season is not about making you weak. It is about making you wise. You are a warrior species. You are strong and fierce and proud. But even the strongest warrior can be blind to what they cannot see. That is what we bring. Different eyes, different perspectives, different solutions." He paused, then said something he had been saving for the right moment. "I am a xenobiologist. I study how different species interact with their environments, and I have noticed something interesting about the Velkari bonding season. It happens once every 10 years. Do you know what else happens on that same cycle? Your territorial aggression peaks. Your clans become more hostile to each other. Wars are most likely to start during these times." He saw several High Council members sit up straighter. The bonding season is not just tradition. It is survival. By bringing in outsiders during your most aggressive period, You force yourselves to think beyond conquest. You create bonds that cross clan lines. You remind yourselves that there are other ways to be strong besides violence. Your ancestors were not fools. They knew exactly what they were doing when they created this tradition. The amphitheater was completely silent now. Vornak wants you to be afraid. He says outsiders will destroy you. But I say you will destroy yourselves if you reject the very thing that has kept your civilization alive for thousands of years. Not, despite the bonding season. Because of it. He took a deep breath for the final part. Vornak has challenged me to prove my worth. I accept. But not with blades or strength. I challenge him with this. Let me live among you for one more year. Judge me by my actions, not by his words. If after 1 year, the clans truly believe I have brought only weakness and division, I will speak before this assembly again and recommend ending the bonding season myself. But if I have brought value, if I have shown that different does not mean lesser, then the tradition continues. Not out of fear of change, but because you choose it. He stepped back, his heart pounding. Vornak stood. You think one small human can prove anything in a year? Fine. I accept your challenge. But when you fail, remember that you brought this judgment upon yourself. But then something unexpected happened. Corvin stood up in the Cathara section. I will stand with him, Corvin announced. When Minho first came to our clan, I doubted him. I challenged my mother's choice. I believed as Vornak believes. But I was wrong. This human has proven himself 100 times over. He is my brother in all ways that matter. If you reject him, you reject me as well. One by one, other Kethera clan members stood. Then Taeyang stood, and other selected individuals from different clans. Then, to Minho's shock, members of other clans began to stand as well. Valkyrie, who had been convinced by his words or moved by his courage, the High Council deliberated for what felt like hours. Finally, the eldest member spoke. The challenge is accepted. Minho of the Cathara clan will have 1 year to prove his worth. But this assembly also recognizes that the Shadrach clan violated sacred law in their treatment of their selected individual. They are censured and will make reparations to Nari. Vornak looked furious, but he could not argue with the High Council's judgment without bringing dishonor to his clan. The assembly ended. As Minho walked out of the amphitheater, Valkyrie from dozens of clans approached him. Some to offer support. Others to warn him that 1 year was not long to prove himself. Still others simply wanted to speak with him, curious about this small human who had stood up to one of the most powerful clan leaders in their society. Thesara found him later that evening. You took a great risk today. I know, Minho said, but it was the right thing to do. You have given yourself an impossible task. How will you prove your worth to all of Valkyrie society in just 1 year? Minho smiled. The same way I proved it to your clan. 1 day at a time. 1 challenge at a time. 1 relationship at a time. Over the following months, Minho became a bridge between worlds. He worked with selected individuals from other clans to create a support network. He traveled to different territories, sharing knowledge and learning from each clan he visited. He helped establish formal protocols for how selected individuals should be treated, turning Nari's suffering into meaningful change. Ambassador Hana contacted him again, this time not to offer extraction but to establish formal cooperation. Earth was impressed by what he had accomplished and wanted to support his work. Yuna even visited, bringing news from New Haven. She barely recognized him. The nervous scientist who had left their colony had become confident and assured, moving through Valkyrie society with the ease of someone who belonged. You've changed, she said one evening as they watched the twin suns set over the Cathara clan grounds. I've grown, Minho replied. I found out who I really am. And who is that? Someone who builds bridges. Someone who sees what's possible when different people work together. Someone who belongs to 2 worlds and can help them understand each other. 20 years later, Minho stood in the same amphitheater where he had once made his desperate speech, but now he wore the formal robes of the Interspecies Integration Council. an organization that had grown from his one-year challenge into a permanent institution. The bonding season had evolved. It now included dozens of species, all participating in cultural exchanges that had brought unprecedented cooperation across the galaxy. The Velkari had not weakened, as Vornak had feared. They had become stronger, their empire expanding not through conquest but through alliance. Vornak himself had eventually acknowledged, in his own grudging way, that Minho had been right. The old clan leader still didn't like outsiders much, but he no longer actively opposed the tradition. Minho watched as a new generation of selected individuals stood before the assembly, ready to begin their own journeys. Among them was a young Velkari who had chosen to join a human colony, a reversal of the traditional pattern that showed how far things had come. Nira stood beside him, now a council member herself. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Leaving your original home?" Minho thought of Earth, where he had been born, of New Haven, where he had worked, of the life he might have had if the Sara had never chosen him. "I didn't leave home," he said finally. "I found it. Home isn't where you're born. It's where you're chosen. It's where you choose to be." The ceremony began, and Minho stepped forward to welcome the new selected individuals. He told them the truth, that the journey would be hard, that they would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, that some of them would fail. But he also told them that if they could push through the fear, if they could embrace being different, if they could build bridges instead of walls, they would find something precious. A family that chose them, a purpose that mattered, a place where they truly belonged. As he spoke, the bonding crystal that had first accepted him all those years ago hung around his neck, warm against his skin. It pulsed with light, as if in agreement. The story of how one human changed an empire was still being written. But Minho knew the most important part. He had proven that strength and diversity were not opposites. They were partners, and together, they could create something greater than either could achieve alone. The bonding season continued, not as a relic of the past, but as a living promise of the future. A future where different species could stand together, not despite their differences, but because of them. And it had all started with a young xenobiologist who had said yes when an alien matriarch offered him an impossible choice. Who had chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. Who had spoken truth when silence would have been safer. Minho of Earth, Minho of the Cathara clan. The Bridge Walker. The first of many, but always the one who showed it was possible. His journey had brought him far from where he started. But looking at the faces of the new selected individuals, seeing their fear and hope and determination, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Home.